Welcome back to another episode of the Scaling Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Harper, and today's guest is Paul Tran. If you're building a franchise or thinking about scaling a business into multiple locations, this episode is packed with perspective that's going to help you.
And another brand approached me in the process called Pepper Lunch. They're a famous Japanese brand from Japan. They have 534 stores to this date. But I've always been a fan of them. There was nothing like it. People actually were, this is before Korean barbecue. People were bringing out these sizzling plates. Customers were actually cooking the food instead of the staff. I thought it was a brilliant business model. The CEO of Pepper Lunch North America approached me late last year at the time that I was selling my company and just offered, he wanted to poach me. I decided to just consult for them just for a few months and see how it went. And in the process, I fell in love with the brand even more. It was so brilliant. Like, people aren't just looking to buy things anymore. They want to experience something.
Paul has launched restaurants, he's scaled franchise brands, and he has helped bring global businesses to the United States. He shares today how he spots opportunities most people miss, what he learned from building and selling his own stores, and how he avoids the many traps that sink so many operators. If you're building anything and hoping to scale to multiple locations, this episode is for you. All right, Paul Tran, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for coming on and dealing with the we had some technical issues, so I appreciate your patience.
Oh, it's all good. Like I said earlier, we are entrepreneurs and things are always happening, and thank goodness we're able to overcome them all, as that's our character. So,
well, this is really exciting for me because we've been kind of internet friends on Twitter now for over a year. And I think you've been following along since the very beginning of Rolling Suds, and I've seen you since I started following you, like go through an exit, get involved in another brand, and so we've been kind of like building businesses in parallel in an industry that we both love so much, but just haven't really had time to kind of talk and get to know each other.
Oh, the feeling is mutual, and it's funny. There's a lot of people that I follow, but what you've been able to stand out from the rest is that you are trying to bring light to, again, the whole responsible franchising thing. Wherever there's a lot of money to be made, there's a lot of bad actors. And unfortunately, franchising has a good stigma as well as a bad stigma. And of course, the bad one tends to scare a lot of people who otherwise could change their lives if they chose the right brand and approached it right. And I appreciate you constantly using your platform to always make sure people know how to approach it right or how to stay away from the pitfalls. So I just want to appreciate you for that. Not a lot of people talk about it enough. A lot of people are always selling you on things, but you are bringing to light. So appreciate that, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's such an important industry to me because my life has been changed so dramatically by franchising, and I didn't know it existed prior to 2017. And so now to be able to understand what a franchise is, be able to impact my family's lives and then the lives of so many different people who I've single-handedly helped become entrepreneurs. I just want that. I want more of that to happen in the world.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. So for the audience, give a little bit of background. What have you done professionally up to this point? Where do you live? You married, kids? Just give kind of a little overview.
Yes to all of it. It's funny because you're in the service-based business, and I'm like, man, that is a hard business. And then I talk to service guys, like, you're in restaurants? That is a hard business.
Turns out all business is hard. Turns out.
That's something we can agree on. But for me, I've been in the restaurant and the franchise and in the entrepreneurial space for about 20 years. It all started in 2005. There's a lot of tangents that we can jump into, and you can poke at whatever you feel is the most valuable to yourself and the audience. But I started off quitting my last semester of college because I had an opportunity to start a restaurant. And the beauty of ignorance early on is that you don't have any barriers in the way because you didn't know
Right.
that certain things are barriers. Like I didn't know I needed to be a chef. I didn't know I needed to go to like culinary school. I didn't know I needed to, go to business school for this or that. And because there were no barriers, I was able to just push through a lot of things that I think that would knock out a lot of people who follow the book. And so,
Right.
but yeah, I started a restaurant in a marketplace in my hometown of SoCal, in the city of Westminster. At the
Yep.
time, there's all the usual suspects like noodles and spring rolls and all the like Asian type of cuisines, but there was nothing in the marketplace for crawfish boils, which were huge in the South, right? Like crawfish and Cajun food. And so, yeah, I realized there was a big gap in the marketplace. I decided to just open it up, and my hunch was right. In business terms, it's the whole supply demand gap that I know now that that's a principle. But I ran that really successfully for about 3 years, and then I got acquired from a private investor. But during that journey, I learned all sorts of things, made all sorts of mistakes. I can probably quantify it to well over $1 million in mistakes and efficiencies and lost opportunities. But during that journey, I got a lot of franchise requests, and I knew it seemed like such a coveted, secretive world at the time because back then, 2005, 2006, it was still closely held by the likes of, McDonald's and Burger King and
Hmm.
those
Yeah.
guys. And so I was curious about it, and it kind of sent me down this path of learning more about how to take a small mom and pop like my business and franchise it. And that led me to a company that was based in DC called Mart. You might know
Yep.
them,
I do.
but
Yeah, I was on his podcast recently.
oh, Dan Rowe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so he's my mentor. I owe a lot of my career and my wealth and connections all to him. But yeah, Mart had an office here in Newport Beach, which is about 20 minutes away from me. So I met with them, tried to get my concept to be franchisable, and I told them I want to open like 1,000 stores and all the typical stuff that ignorant people say.
Hmm. Yeah.
But in the process, I realized I wasn't ready to franchise, but at the time, they were starting to grow rapidly in on the West Coast, and they were hiring for people. And at the time, since I was young, wasn't married yet. I had all the time in the world. I decided to run the restaurant and work for Mart at the same time. So I ended up working for Dan for 10 years, and he taught me
Wow.
everything about
That's
franchise
awesome.
development, operations, infrastructure, everything that you can think of. And so for 10 years, I pretty much helped a bunch of Dan's brands to either go international, get acquired, go public. And I learned so much along the way that I realized that I made every single mistake possible. But I always knew during my time there that I would use all the knowledge that I learned along the way. I was able to learn so much where I didn't have to make any of the mistakes myself anymore. I was just learning along the way, and I knew that I would use that to do it again the right way. And that's when, I started, having more money and more connections. And that's when the Halal Guys became a client of Mart's. It was, the famous food carts from New York City. And they always had lines wrapped around the door, wrapped around the buildings of the carts they operated from. And I looked around my marketplace, same exact thing as my crawfish boil insight. I
Hmm.
I just noticed that everyone was doing burgers and pizzas, but no one was doing Middle Eastern Mediterranean food. And so I wanted to fill that gap. I just knew that there was enough demand for it. And that was before Kava hit the scene. That was before
Hmm.
Luna Grill became like anything to pay attention to. It was mainly just a bunch of mom and pop Middle Eastern places. So I ended up building a team. I raised a small fund. We bought the franchise rights for SoCal, and for the next 10 years, from 2014 to 2024, we built 11 stores, and we lost 2 stores in the pandemic. Happy to touch on those if you'd like. And the last 2 years ago, we got approached by a hospitality company that owned a bunch of hotels and Starbucks licenses and other brands. They wanted to have Middle Eastern in their portfolio, and so they decided to make an offer on it for us for our stores. And after a year of going back and forth with the franchisor and with the landlords that held our leases, we sold our company late last year. And So I had another exit, thankfully. And then I thought I was just going to retire and hang out for a little bit. But I always joke around and say that I live in California. There's no such thing. And also, another brand approached me in the process called Pepper Lunch. They're a famous Japanese brand from Japan. They have 534 stores to this date. But
Wow.
I've always been a fan of them. I first experienced them in Australia and just saw that there was nothing like it. People actually were, this is before Korean barbecue. People were bringing out these sizzling plates. Customers were actually cooking the food instead of the staff. I thought it was a brilliant business model. But at the time, I was so busy with Halal Guys, it didn't occur to me that I could ever like operate a business or consult for them. Or, they have a couple hundred stores already, and they don't need me. And so the CEO of Pepper Lunch North America approached me late last year at the time that I was selling my company, and just offered, he wanted to poach me. So he waited patiently for a couple months, and I continued to think about it more, and I decided to just consult for them just for a few months and see how it went. And in the process, I fell in love with the brand even more. It was so brilliant. Like, people aren't just looking to buy things anymore. They want to experience something.
Yeah, they want experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's nothing like that model before. And I also saw, again, it's a template I seem to be using. Like, there's a big supply demand gap. There's an growing interest in Asian food and Asian culture, but not a lot of supply. Right now, I can, to this day, I can still only think of a few brands that are catering to the Asian market, like Panda Express. That's it. And so I just felt like I think it's another supply demand gap I need to fill. So I ended up asking my Halal Guys partners if they'd like to join me on the next adventure, because I know they can't retire either. And we decided to partner up and buy the rights for Pepper Lunch. And actually, a week ago, we opened our first store, and
Nice.
in the city
Congrats.
of Irvine. Thank you. It's been nutty. It's been well received, and sales have been incredible. And we're now looking for store number two, and that's where we're at today. So
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. Thanks. Sorry for the long story, but
No,
there you
no,
go.
no, that's fine. Yeah. So I don't know how we missed this in following each other, but I'm from Newport Beach originally.
Oh, why did you leave? It's so
I
nice here.
it's beautiful there. But so I was working in the Hollywood industry, in film and television up
Okay.
in Los Angeles. Went to college at UC Santa Barbara, but grew up in Newport, and
Oh,
did that for like 5 years. And then I was like, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but I definitely don't want to do this. And a buddy of mine worked in the franchise industry and told me I should get into franchise development. And I was like, "What's franchise development?" And he told me about franchising, and that was in 2017. And so I emailed his boss. He worked at ChemDry. I emailed his boss like every 3 weeks for like 6 months until he hired me, and then I moved to Nashville to work in franchising. So that's what brought me
oh.
to
So
Nashville
franchise took
specifically.
you to Nashville.
Yeah. Yeah. So I specifically moved here to work in franchising, and I realized, like, I did not see a path to like owning a home in LA until like my 40s, at least on the path that I was kind of on, from a career perspective.
Yeah.
So I knew I needed to kind of like figure out what I wanted to do. And so I called a bunch of people, but the idea was figure out what I wanted to do with my time, and basically helping people become business owners, which is what franchising is at its core, seemed really interesting to me. And so I moved to Nashville to work in franchising. But I'm
Right
from
on.
Newport. Yeah.
So, in the film and television, were you more so behind the camera or in front of the camera? Because you project really
Behind.
well, by the way.
Thank you. Behind, I was on the business side, so I would basically work on the teams of like Academy Award winning and nominated writers, directors, actors, and was on kind of the path. If you know people in LA, it's like the kind of agent trainee kind of grind path that takes like 8 to 10 hard years to like really develop a client list.
Sure.
And I just was like, I didn't like anyone I worked for, and I didn't want anything that they had. It was like the second partner that I had worked with at the company handed me their divorce paperwork and said, I need you to summarize this for me because I don't have time to read it myself and figure out what I need to like negotiate on. And I was like, Nope. Nope. Like I want to have a family one day. Like I want to settle down. I don't know what that looks like, but I need to get into a position where I can do that. So my family still lives in SoCal, right off 19th and like right where 19th turns into Dover,
Oh, right on.
right off Tustin and 19th basically.
Oh, right on. Well,
Yeah.
I love that you were very sensitive to, your teammate or your staff or giving you those divorce papers to summer. Like other people would just accept it, like that's part of the business. Whereas I feel like you actually did something actionable with that. So
Yeah.
yeah, kudos to you for dodging probably a couple bullets, maybe a cannonball too.
Maybe a cannonball. Yeah, it was. I was like, wait, like if this is what it takes to make this work, like I'm out, And also, like the Los Angeles kind of Hollywood scene is very. It's who you know. It's what parties can you get into. It's who can you get a meeting with. It's very like fake and falsified, and it
Yeah.
just wasn't for me.
In my defense, I agree with you, and I'm actually a hardcore introvert. A lot of people don't know that.
Yep.
And also, I actually love Orange County because it's the suburbs. There's like a little bit of distance from LA,
Oh,
and,
totally.
and so I get that too. So I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. So when you started working, I want to double click at the beginning of your franchise kind of career. So when you started your company from scratch. It was non-franchised. Is that correct? The
Correct. Yeah.
first one. Okay. And then you were like, I want to franchise this thing. You meet Dan. He's like, this is going to be what it's going to take. Was that before Five Guys or during Five Guys?
It was actually in the middle of Five Guys,
Five
like
Guys, yeah.
crazy growth. They had
Because
already,
that's like his claim to fame.
yes.
I mean, he's got a lot, but that's like a big one that everyone knows Dan Rowe for.
Yeah. So I actually never met Dan at the time. So Dan
Okay.
operated out of the DC office in Old Town Alexandria,
Yep.
whereas their office was actually managed by his dad, Al Rowe. And so that I met with Al first. And
Okay.
then Al made the decision. I guess he liked me enough and he knew that I was hungry enough. So he took me and I ended up working in the West Coast office for a couple months before I met Dan. For 6 years I was struggling because I didn't, now that franchise sales is not your typical sales job.
No, it's not.
And so I was doing well in telemarketing. I was doing well in all other sales functions when I was in college, but this
Yeah.
was just a really weird sales process. There's like compliance, there's, making sure there's capital, you're not just selling, you also need to qualify too. And
Hmm.
it's just a crazy, weird process. I didn't get that for the next 6 months until it was 6 months later that I closed my first deal and I understood like how to do it properly. And then I ended up, being their top salesperson for many years while there. But it took a long time to get it. So I didn't meet Dan, and Dan didn't start mentoring me maybe until like maybe 6 to 9 months in because yes, he was busy with Five Guys. He was busy with a bunch of other brands that were starting to like knock on his door because of
Hmm.
Five Guys. I got to learn a little bit about like how he took Five Guys to stratospheric success, but I was on the tail end, so I didn't get to like work on the count directly, but I got to see a lot of the case studies like firsthand, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was my first job in franchising was franchise sales.
Uh-huh.
And literally up until April of last year, I've spent so from 2017 to April of 2024, I've spent the majority of my time, I mean don't get me wrong, there's plenty of other things, but the majority of my like days were spent doing franchise development. And I don't
Yeah.
think that people fully understand how difficult it is to
Yeah.
sell someone a franchise because you're recruiting, you're qualifying, you're also selling on your brand, but they have to believe that they can do it themselves.
Yeah.
And it's like this whole different like animal of a sale. And it took me, I mean, it took you 6 months. It took me 4 months to close my first. And then every year from there, I was top at the company I worked at. But like, you have to figure it out, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's not enough of like curriculum to kind of show you how to do it. That's why a lot of mom and pops like they just outsource to companies like France Mart and
mhm.
then or they just take whoever has a pulse, and they end up paying for it later.
Oh my
And
God,
so
don't even get me started.
it's well, you gotta thank them because they pretty much make responsible franchising more important than ever. So you gotta
Yeah.
love and hate it. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I
exactly.
wholeheartedly agree. It's a process, but it's so much fun though. Like you said earlier. I mean, when done right, I've been able to see a lot of people whose lives have been changed. Like there's people who left their corporate jobs and now they own like multiple stores, and they feel like it's work they're proud of, and it's changed
Hmm.
their lives, and it's pretty cool on the tail end if done right. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about the brand you currently, how many, what's your development schedule look like? How big do you plan to grow it? How big is your
Yeah.
team currently? Give me a little
Yeah.
bit more detail.
I'm gonna put two hats on at the same time, even though it looks fashionably weird. I'm double dipping right now, where I'm consulting for Pepper Lunch Corporate,
Yep.
and so on the sale on the corporate side, I am still doing franchise sales.
Okay.
So we have about 75 stores in development. Before I jumped on, there were 40 stores that have been put in development. I jumped on and I sold another 35 stores, including five of my own. And so there are a total 75. My personal deal at five stores is I'm building one store the first year, and I'm building two stores every year after that. So my five-store development should be finishing in 3 years. Right
Okay.
now, I'm ahead of it because I signed up, I think, in April, and we've already opened our first store. And so we're now right now looking for stores two and three. But and that's just the North America development. We also just started opening up to Canada. We have
Okay.
a bunch of interest coming from Alberta, Canada, as well as Ontario, and we're meeting with a multi-unit franchisee from Quebec. They want to open in Quebec, so
Oh,
that's pretty
cool.
exciting too.
Yeah.
And this has nothing to do with the global growth of the brand. Globally in Asia, where Pepper Lunch came from, and they have most of their stores there. They have about 500 stores there alone.
Oh,
They're going
wow.
to be opening another 60 stores alone. That's not counting the 75 in development here.
Wow.
So yeah, a lot of exciting growth, and I love the fact. It's funny, you have a stigma. There's a stigma that maybe I'm curious about asking you.
Yeah.
How do you feel about franchisors that are private equity backed?
Yeah. Well, it's such a big piece of our industry that the short answer is it depends.
Yeah.
But the longer answer is like I think that a franchisor that's private equity backed has to have a private equity company that is deep rooted in franchising. I think there's a lot of private equity companies that are like they see royalties, they see consistencies, they see 10-year contracts, they see 10-year lease agreements, and they're like, "Great, like I'll just go buy that cash flow and put it into the portfolio." But if you're going to sponsor or buy a brand, you need to have the operating experience of franchising. So, like, some examples would be like Riverside that bought and sold Neighborly twice,
Mm,
or Princeton, which bought Stretch Zone. They bought Five Star Franchising, and Five Star, when they bought them, had like two brands, and now they have six, and that's in a 3 year time span. So they basically have this kind of like experience and institutional knowledge about franchising.
yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. Like, I think a franchisor, if they don't have institutional knowledge about how to franchise a business, that means they need to hire someone or partner with someone that does, so that they can franchise responsibly or the right way. And I think it's the same thing with a private equity sponsor.
Yeah. Well said. Like I love. I knew you were gonna say it depends. But yeah, I again same thing with restaurants too. I think a lot of private equity companies, when they unfortunately private equity companies have a 3 to 5 year time horizon, right?
Hmm.
They want to, and so because you align your incentives that way, they're going to try and squeeze as much profitability as possible at the cost of like the soul of the company or the DNA. And so the recent example of Jersey Mike's, selling to I think Blackstone, right?
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
so worried because, gosh, I was so worried, but that they were gonna like milk it and lose the soul. But I'm so glad Peter's still on the board. Like he still
Yeah.
maintains control. So that makes me a lot. That makes me happier. The reason why I say that is because Pepper Lunch was acquired by a private equity company called J-Star in 2020. The founder finally sold. And I think the founder is really good restaurateur, and he grew. I mean, I'm shocked that he grew as fast as much as he did without a lot of like institutional knowledge, which means that the brand has a lot of legs. But in order to get to the next level, you do need like partners who know how to like scale it. And J Star is not your typical private equity company. I was hesitant when I was approached and I was told that they were owned by private equity. But what I learned is that J Star has in their portfolio companies in logistics, and I don't know if you know Suntory whiskey. So they're like a pretty famous like whiskey and alcoholic beverage brand from Japan. But I noticed that all of their portfolio brands have been in their portfolio for decades.
Oh, interesting.
And so they're okay holding on for a long time, which means it's something that they're proud of. They see enough profitability to keep it, and they can make long-term decisions. And so that made me pretty happy to know it's not your typical private equity strategy. So anyway, yeah, that's one tangent to go down.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, and I'll like say this for the audience, like the first brand that I was involved in was, I didn't know it, on the tail end of a private equity turn. So they bought the brand. The goal was to grow it, create enterprise value, and then sell it,
yeah,
which is what most private equity companies do. So I was basically in the franchise sales role, and without same store sales growth being like, that's basically the only metric, you have to sell units. And
correct.
so what I was doing was basically the need to sell the units was more important than who we were selling the units to, was kind of the direction I was being given.
Yeah,
And so we would sign people up and we would finance their franchise fees. And we, if they didn't have that much capital, we'd let them come in. Like, it was very much like, we need to sell units. And then there wasn't as much support on the back end. Because the model in the brand that I was involved in was kind of a distributorship model. Like, they had a flat royalty, but they sold chemicals and they made their money off of chemical sales. And
got
so
it.
it was kind of like a weird misalignment. But I almost left franchising because of kind of how that was structured and how I was feeling signing people up and then them not getting the support they needed. And I'd go and I'd push back on operations and I'd be like, why haven't you called the person that I signed up 2 weeks ago? They're going to training in 5 weeks. Like, what is going on here? And they'd be like, it drove me absolutely crazy. So I say to candidates, like, that brand taught me a lot more about like what not to do than what to do.
Yeah. Oh,
And I've seen the negative impacts of private equity on a brand.
for sure. For your sales positions, was it commission only or was it base plus commission?
I had a base plus commission, but the lion's share of my of what I made was commission based.
So when hopefully I'm not disclosing too much. Sorry, Dan. But like when I always want these podcasts to be super dense and super
Yeah,
honest. So
yeah.
when I first got the job at Mart, I got a base plus commission. I felt like it was a perfect alignment of yes, you do get incentivized for bringing deals in, but there's a base to where you're not forced to like get deals through the door. I joined Mart in 2006, and that worked really well until 2008 with the financial crisis. And I think at the time, like I think Mart had to make some tough decisions, and folks just were being laid off and stuff. It was a difficult time for everyone, right? But I was really frustrated because, man, I just started getting used to franchise sales. I just started understanding it, and I didn't want it like to get cut off. And so I told Dan, "Hey, Dan, like I'm okay being commission only. I want to stay on and learn this business, and I'm willing to take more risk if you give me a higher commission if you can't pay my base." And Dan agreed graciously, and
That's awesome.
thankfully in 2008. That was the year I made over $1 million in commissions. and
That's wild.
at the beauty was at the same time there were a lot of corporate executives who got laid off with golden parachutes, and they were sick and tired of taking it from the man and and not being able to decide their own destiny. So that was a perfect storm. But in the process, I will be honest with you, the incentives were not aligned right because I got paid so well and getting deals closed. Like in my guilty conscience, like I've brought some deals through the finish line where franchisees should not have been franchisees. And so thankfully some of them make it worthwhile where they've changed their lives for the better, but some franchisees did just hurt some of the brands that I worked for. And of course, because they didn't operate them well, they lost money as well. So, I that's stuff that I'm really sensitive to as I go through my career now, as I'm much older and hopefully allegedly more wiser. But yeah, that's why I asked you because like when I got my package with Pepper Lunch Corporate, I had to make sure I felt like I had a base where I get paid to make good decisions too.
Yeah.
So anyway, now that's just a personal decision.
Yeah, and that's really important. I mean, for me, like there were some franchisees that I would sign up, and I was told that if they have this amount of money and they have this amount of experience, like they're good, like they'll be able to work it in that model. I'd call them a year later, and some of them would hang up on me, or laugh and hang up, and it drove me crazy. Excuse me, I'd have to like, if I was to look, I'd have to like call and then be like, and I'd get that, and I'd be like, I have to take the rest of the day off. It was brutal. And the reality of it is, the reality of franchise sales is not everyone should start a business, and not everyone should start a franchise because of kind of the some people are right for like executing on a model, and some people want to like create all the systems themselves. They want to vet the vendors. They want to come up with the marketing plans. Like they want to do that stuff. And like, if they buy a franchise, they're just not going to be able to do that. And so they're going to be unhappy.
Yeah.
And also home service franchises specifically, like you need to provide a path for franchise owners to build an asset that can eventually run without them. And many home service franchises, at least that I've seen, will help people build like a really good job. But if it's just a job, like why not just keep a job? Because then you don't have all the headache of like having to make sure like, the lights stay on and such like that. And that model that I was working in was very much you buy this, you run the truck yourself, you make, 80 grand a year and then like eventually you scale yourself out of the truck. And it's like, shocker, not everyone was able to do that.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. There's this joke where it says, I quit my 9 to 5 so I can work 24 hours a day or something like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty a lot of people get sold improperly and get pushed the wrong way, or they have the wrong mindset getting into it. So yeah, I hear you. Unfortunately, a lot of franchises in the restaurant space too. The business model requires you to be in the store. So you pretty much didn't really, you traded one fire to get into another. So, yeah.
And I think there's something to be said about that because, I mean, we've scaled Rolling Sets from one corporate location to now over 255 franchise locations in 31 states. And
congrats, dude. And I love, by the way, I have to interrupt you. Like, I love that you're building it in public too. You're able to kind of share people your journey, the good and the bad, and you build a lot more trust among people. I bet you that franchise sales is a lot easier now because people have joined your journey. They trust you. That's already like half the battle, and they want to join the excitement and the growth. So yeah,
it's a big piece of it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's been. I did not know that was going to be part of the model when I launched this. Like, in fact, when I launched this, if you would have asked me if Aaron was going to try to be, someone on social media recording like podcasts and looking at the camera, I would have been like, absolutely not. But I've just realized, to your point, that it's an incredibly high leverage thing to do because people who want to either become a franchisee or they might want to become an employee or they want to be a vendor, an approved vendor, like they know me well.
Yeah.
Before I've ever met them.
Yeah. And they trust
you. They trust me. And that's what content is it's building trust at scale.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because, before Pepper Lunch, when I ran the Halal Guys, I still did a lot of consulting for mom and pop. So in 2017, I left France Mart after working there for 10 years. And there's a lot of brands who can't afford France Mart or they aren't a good fit for France Mart's portfolio. So I got hit up all the time for franchising advice and this or that. And there were good mom and pops that just needed help. They just needed a
Yeah.
slight upper hand. A bunch of my advice actually goes towards building in public. I usually tell people like, hey, franchising is a lot more competitive now than it used to be. Back then, franchising was so sexy. You can just say you're franchising and you're going to get a lot of attention. Now the attention has moved to content. And
Hmm.
I tell them like, hey, you need to start building a newsletter and need to start posting about your journey, not just all the flowery business to consumer content, but show behind the scenes, show all the hard work that people don't appreciate, like the years that you've done negotiating with vendors, how your staff opens for the day, things that you do in the community. You can even go as far as long as you're following franchise law, you can just show the economics of like what
Yeah.
it's like. And I tell them like you just need to share your journey by newsletter or something because that's already half the battle. And now you have a deeper connection with the people who will eventually be your franchisees because there's just way too much competition now, too many franchise opportunities. If you don't do it this, you're just not going to stand out. So I love
Yeah.
that you're doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I have to say, like, I've learned a lot from following people like Alex Hormozy or Cody Sanchez or these people who have been able to capture attention and like I just what we're doing from like building a brand, like we're building the biggest power washing brand in public in front of everyone, and the ups and downs that are associated with that. And I would have loved to be able to follow someone's journey. Like if I could follow Brian Scudamore when he built 1-800 Got Junk, or if I could have followed the guys who built Two Men in a Truck, or if I could have followed the Dwyer Group when they were building Neighborly from the beginning, like that would have been so helpful for me as a budding entrepreneur, or people to just kind of understand what franchising is. And it has gone a lot bigger than I thought it was going to. I go to these franchise conferences, like I was just at IFA a week ago or whatever, and like I had like 15, 20 people come up, congratulate me on the Superdome, tell me they've been following me for a long time, tell me that one guy said that you say that all the things that all of us are thinking that we aren't willing to say, like, and I'm just realizing like how big of an impact it's having, which means I need to do more of it.
Yeah. Well, that drives you. And I guess, sorry that you and I didn't have those leading the way, but I guess it's just up to us.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that you're seeing this whole new generation of kind of franchisors and franchise professionals and franchise developers and suppliers that are on this kind of like millennial, like there's definitely a changing of the guard happening.
yeah.
And specifically for Rolling Suds, like some of my mentors who are minority shareholders in the company, like they are mentoring me because they want to make sure that the next generation of franchising, like that's part of the reason. Like it's not a huge economic difference for them. They have like 1 or 2%, but they enjoy making sure that the franchise business model that's given them the life of 35 years of career is kind of shepherded into the next thing. And you see this a lot with a lot of the people that like you and me and some others on Twitter and LinkedIn who are posting regularly about the brands they're building or the brands they're involved in. That's just the kind of world we live in now. And if you're not doing that, to your point, it's going to be really hard to stand out. There's so many franchises out there.
Yeah, 100%. And most of the best franchisees that I've sold to have been like, okay, I've been following for years now. What is this pepper lunch about? Or I
Yeah.
see you everywhere now. What is the big fight? Like that, those are the conversations that start with good franchisees. All the leads or all the people who inquire that are not good leads, usually they're like, what's the franchise fee? What's the build out
Yeah.
cost? And
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
they ask those questions, I'm like, okay, let me send you a link and I'll have you go through that journey. And if you're willing to go through that, then let's talk again. But
Yeah.
I have to pick and choose my battles to serve the best franchisees who already trust and are ready to go and they trust. And so, yeah, it's definitely a good way to prioritize who to serve and be of service to.
So that leads into kind of a thing I like to talk about is like so content creation. When did you kind of feel like when did you realize it was going to be important, and kind of specifically, let's talk about Twitter. I don't know if you're active on other platforms, but like
Yeah.
when did you realize it was important, and kind of what's your strategy look like today with content?
Yeah, so actually, Twitter. I love that you still call it Twitter. With Twitter, I actually was a little bit more using it for for memes, and also there was a time where I was just dabbling in like crypto, and
Yeah.
I actually didn't even consider it for franchising. I was just doing it for fun. But then I found the likes of you, and I found like Dan Reese, and I found a bunch of other people that like, wow, this is not just for, toxic stuff.
Yeah.
I will say that 98% of the leads that I get are actually through LinkedIn.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, my
Interesting.
content game on LinkedIn is a lot more intentional and consistent. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure you've seen. I haven't really been too active on Twitter. Again, I
I've
have to
noticed
think.
that. I've noticed
Yeah,
that you used to, a couple of years ago when we started being connected, you used to be a lot more active. I was going to ask you about why that change.
yeah. I still try to do it there, but I just noticed that more of the leads and attention and conversations that are fruitful that lead to deals actually happen on LinkedIn. Everyone has their own platform where they thrive, and maybe the way I write it or structure it on Twitter is not as effective. But on LinkedIn, if you do check my LinkedIn, I post about 2, 3 times a week. I get tons of engagement. I get a lot of DMs saying, "Hey, like, what's this about?" I do have a team of people who are reaching out and connecting with multi-unit franchise operators on LinkedIn, and it's just a lot more fruitful for me. With Twitter, I just try to. It's more like whatever I post on LinkedIn, I try to just copy and paste it on Twitter. I know
Hmm.
Twitter has a different type of receptivity, but I just rather have some presence than none at all. But
Hmm.
LinkedIn is the play. I don't really know when I started taking it seriously. I was just frustrated that I was just frustrated that most franchise development posts are pretty much just business to consumer content, and it's very flowery, and everybody was like proven system, lots of
Hmm.
support, all the
Hmm.
usual stuff that just makes you want to vomit. And so
Yeah.
I was just like, there's no differentiation, there's no value. It's pretty much just taking a B2C content and reskinning it with just the usual buzzwords. And so if you'll notice my content is actually pretty knee deep in the woods. Like, if I'm going to say we have a lot of good support, what does that look like?
Hmm.
And so I actually get into like the background of the team, how intensive the training is. I get into the weeds of like, you high sales or high economics. Okay, let's talk about the economics. Why does it work? I show them behind the scenes of like how our proprietary system works, and I'm just trying to show them angles of like, if I was a franchise actually one of my unfair advantages for me is that I'm also a franchisee. I
Hmm.
get both sides. And so that's why I get so frustrated with the advertising that a lot of franchisors do. Like the stuff I want to see as a multi-unit operator is like behind the scenes stuff, the meat on the bone, the stuff that doesn't really get covered by the usual fluff surface level stuff. And so I just started creating content that I would appreciate if I was a multi-unit franchisee looking for new brands. And so I just started doing that, and that's what started the DMs, and that's what started the people tagging their clients, and that's what started like franchise sales for me in this day and age. Back then, like when I started with FranceSmart, it was a lot easier. We just sell on those portals like Franchise Gator and
Hmm.
Biz
Same
Buy
here.
Sell. They
Yeah.
don't work anymore.
No, they don't. It's
They're
a
a bunch of
waste of
people
time.
who probably got just like mortgage loans. You just got shopped by like 20 other people, and so there's no loyalty. But my content, just like you mentioned, when you post on content, you get actual qualified people who know and love your brand, and there's less competing or having to convince. It's more like just making sure you're the right fit at this point. So I'd say content creation is pretty much your salesperson does most of the heavy lifting, kind of qualifies the people already. So by the time they reach out to me, we have much more meaningful conversations. And so, yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it answers my question perfectly. Like I made a pretty big kind of educated bet. You know, business, like running a business is like a series of problems, and you don't know the solution to the problem. So you make guesses, and then you implement and you allocate resources, and then you hope that those things end up working out. And sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong.
I love
I made
that.
a pretty big one. Last year, I was like, okay, I think that if I stop focusing all my time on doing the franchise sales myself, this was in April of last year, and I build a sales team and I focus more time on actually creating content, then the cost of acquiring a franchisee, which, as you know, is one of the highest costs that a franchisor has, in our case, it is the highest cost, then we'll decrease that cost through organic channels. And therefore, it will be able to, A, pay for a great sales team, and then also allow us to reinvest more money in the business by hiring other great people to prepare us for growth.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, Paul, nobody thought it was a good idea. like, like it was like, no, that's a waste of time. What do you mean you're just going to go talk to the camera some more? And I was like, trust me, I promise you, I think it'll work. And so in 2023, 7% of our franchise sales revenue came from organic content.
Nice.
By the end of 2024, 42% of our franchise sales revenue came from organic
Wow.
content that I posted online.
So
42%.
you're in the right to say I told you so to
I
whoever.
did. I did. It definitely would have been like Aaron, I told you so if it went the other way. But what we were able to do is we were able to build. So we have like a full executive team. I mean, I've got a brand president, a CMO, a chief development officer, a VP of franchisee success. Like we have a full executive staff to support our franchise system that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to get if we continued to pay super high acquisition costs.
Yeah.
But it's people who are following me and they say, hey, Aaron, I've been following you for a year now. Like, I already talked to Lisa. I'm just messaging you, letting you know, like, I hope you approve us.
Yeah.
And we turn away more than we bring in. So, like, it's allowed us to really kind of, like, dial in. And what's wild is those franchisees that came in through organic sources online, they were more qualified and approved to buy more territories generally. So,
Yeah.
it's just wild what it can do.
Ugh, I love that so much. And I have another thought, if I
Yeah,
may.
yeah, please.
Content creation is the lead domino because I usually tell clients, small brands that don't have the massive budget, content creation is going to be your salesperson. If you did not hire a salesperson but you created content, you'd still be able to attract sales. If you hired a salesperson, they still need content to work with anyway. So you need to lean more towards the content creation part, and it's evergreen. Like it does the sales, and early on you need to be doing the selling anyway as the mom and pop. You need to be the
I
one
agree.
vetting everyone.
100%
So
agree.
so the salesperson is not ready. You're not ready for a salesperson yet. And another thing is, people also need to see content as one of the 20 touches that you need to have on a customer anyway. I can't tell you how many times that franchisees that I'm trying to sell to, like, yes, I'm doing the sales conversations. Yes, I'm doing the discovery days. But then they also, reach out to me privately and say, hey, I saw you post that content about this or that. I love that. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. And that's just one of the 20 touches needed to close a deal anyway. So content just gives you a reason to follow up with prospects as well. It's not like just following up, just touching base and all that empty crap that, again, that irritates me. Like now I can just say, hey, I just wrote this piece. I wrote this actually for you because and I you can't be the only one that appreciates this. And usually for example, one of them is, I wholeheartedly believe that you need to do a soft opening for 30 days or more because you really don't want to have your staff being burned out. They need the repetition. They need the perfection. You need to be okay delaying it for another month. Just as long as now the workers feel more confident and able to serve customers. They're not overwhelmed. They're not burned out. They won't leave at the worst possible time. And I sent that to them, and they're like, I wholeheartedly agree, and I appreciate this. And they feel even more philosophically aligned with the brand. So content creation has so many different use cases and so many layers and dynamics. It's not just sales. It's service. It's clarity of thought. There's just so much. Like, yeah, content creation is the lead domino. I mean, that's all I could
Yeah.
say. So preaching
Yeah.
to the choir, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. So, so with this brand, you're going to launch 5 stores in 3 years.
Yes.
What's kind of the longer term vision? Stay at corporate, do a multi-unit franchisee, transition out of corporate, be full multi-unit, open more stores. Like, what's kind of your vision for this brand, and how does it compare to the ones past?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. And I need to be okay with I don't know.
Yeah.
But with Halal Guys, for example, I was still with France Mart for 3 years. By the time we opened our third store, that was when I felt like it was the right time to focus more on scaling the rest of my development. So I left France Mart in 2017 by store three. With Pepper Lunch, I don't know. I love the company. I love the leadership team. They've they've been a breath of fresh air with responsible franchising and other things. And I hope I can stay with them forever because I feel like I would love to have a hand in like the overall company growth of it. So I'd love to just continue double dipping. Um, but as far as my 5 store deal, so far it's looking like I have a bunch of investors who have joined me from my Halal Guys journey who are now like, hey, how come you're doing this without me? They want to get involved. So my 5 store deal actually is turning into a 6 store deal by next week. And then
Oh,
I
wow,
have two,
great.
yeah, I also have 2 other
Congrats.
investors who actually might make that 2 more stores added to the development schedule. So I don't
Wow.
know. I don't know. So right now I'm just trying to enjoy it. I'm trying to build the right team to make all that scale possible. And we'll see what the future holds. But yeah, the honest question is I have no idea.
And for those listening, like, what are the economics behind the business of whatever you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah.
Like, how much does it cost to open one? What's kind of the average unit volume?
Yeah.
Whatever else that you're able to
So,
share.
yeah, typical stores are about 1,600, 1,700 square feet, and
Okay.
they typically so this is one of the biggest hurdles to jump over. A typical fast casual brand at that square footage will probably cost about 400 to 500,000. That's probably like a Jersey Mike's, for example, at that space size. With Pepper Lunch, because we are tech heavy, and because there's a lot of like proprietary equipment that we need to put in there, you're expecting your store to be about 600, 700,000. So it's a little bit more expensive, but I feel like whatever you pay on the front end, you actually make it back on the back end. So I'd say Jersey Mike's, Halal Guys, they're relatively inexpensive to build, but it's quite labor intensive. If you've been to Jersey Mike's, you know that like there's a lot of people working in the front, all that stuff. It's not a bash on them. The model works, obviously, but with Pepper Lunch, you can do some crazy volumes with very few people because the technology does most of the heavy lifting. So we have a store here in Irvine. Uh, well, you live in Orange County, so you know that Jamboree and Alton, if that sounds
Yep, I know
familiar.
exactly where that is.
There's
Yep.
a store that's
Yep.
been there for 6 years. They do 2.8 million,
Wow.
and they only need during busy time. They only need about 6 people to man the store.
Wow.
Compare that to my Halal Guys, where we had stores that did 3 to 4 million out of tiny square footage, but we needed 13 people in the store.
Wow. That's a big difference in
Yeah, so
COGS.
imagine I just put so much more money back into my bottom line because of that. So yeah, it's a little bit more expensive on the front end, but we require less labor, which is more relevant now than ever when it comes to like difficulty in finding staff, being able to pay your staff your $20 plus an hour in California with their minimum wage stuff, and so all sorts of other labor issues. Um, so yeah, like of course that's I wish I could share more, but the FTD won't let me share more.
I totally understand. That's why I said whatever you're comfortable slash legally allowed to share is what I totally fine. So when you with the FDD, does it show what the U.S. stores do as a separate FDD than what the stores overseas and in Canada do?
No, the FTD just governs the U.S., so Asia
Yep,
doesn't have any numbers in there. We only show our
got it.
U.S. top line numbers.
And how many are open in the U.S.?
There are 5. There's
Oh, just 5 that are open in the U.S.
yeah, the rest of the
So you
5
guys
are
are on the early stages of U.S. development.
yeah. It's kind of exciting because
That's
Like
cool.
it's
That's a fun place to be with a brand.
That's true. That's true. But
Yeah.
like I've with BrandSmart, I was so used to working with brands that truly only have 3 or 4 stores, whereas Pepper Lunch has like 500 stores. It's been replicated 500 times, and the
Yeah.
business model works. But usually at that stage, like if that was 500 stores of Dave's Hot Chicken in the States, that means the territory's already sold. But the U.S. still is wide open,
Yeah,
so we're pretty
totally.
excited about that. So yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. And what's the proprietary? So, like, what's the tech? Like, is it like a Shake Shack type model where, like, there's like kind of a, because you walk into a Shake Shack, there's no cash registers. Like, it's the tech there. Is that kind of like what it is for Pepper Lunch? Kind of removes the cash register people.
Yeah, it's I love that they are committed to the hospitality portion because yes, the when you enter the store, and I can send you pictures if you're curious, but
Yeah.
when you enter the store, typically the normal model is there's a counter where you go up to the counter and it's the staff facing the customers like and you just are placing your order like normal. But with Pepper Lunch's hospitality model, the staff actually is in the front of the counter with the customer, and they are actually showing the customer how to use the kiosk. So that there's a hospitality element. You're not completely outsourcing the model to robots because that doesn't work either. Because Pepper Lunch requires a slight bit of education and a learning curve, and also while when the staff is showing them how to use the kiosk, you're pretty much training the customer how to do it themselves next time. So that over time it makes it a lot cheaper as a labor model. But there's still hospitality there if you need it. So Shake Shack is Shake Shack has like one side of the wall where it's the kiosks, and then there's another side where it's the cashier. Whereas for us, we kind of combine them both in the same area to make
Cool.
most of the small square footage. We have smaller square footage than Shake Shack. As far as the tech that is proprietary and patented, there's an induction cooker that comes from Japan, where when you put these patented iron plates on the cooker, it heats it up to 500 degrees in less than 70 seconds.
Wow.
So that's pretty much the plate that cooks the food too. When it hits 500 degrees, the staff is not doing the cooking. They're just putting rice, putting protein, putting their secret sauces, and then just sending it out. And that takes less than 3 minutes total. So no matter how busy it is, your food comes out almost instantly. And so customers, who are strapped for lunch, they can come there knowing that they'll get their food really quickly. And because the customer's doing the cooking, there's less labor costs on our end. It's brilliant. Everyone wins. So
That's great.
that's
That's a
pretty
great
much how it
model.
works. The model, the main part of the model.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, cool, Paul. Thank you for so much for coming on, and it's been great kind of talking and getting to know. Where can people find you if they either want to buy a pepper lunch or follow along your journey, stuff like that?
Yeah, and thank you for having me as well. The moment you sent out a message asking to get on the show, I was like, absolutely, because there's more. We need to flip the ratio on good franchising. There's just so many bad
Yeah,
case
I
studies
agree.
about bad franchising and lawsuits and stuff like that, and there's just not enough of how franchising has changed lives and could be the best thing possible. So, yes, if I can have a little hand in that with you, I'd be proud. But as far as if they're interested in learning more, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn is where I do most of the conversations. It's linkedin.com /in Paul T. Tran. And pepperlunchrestaurants.com is also another avenue to reach out to me if you want to do a little bit more research before having a conversation with me. But I'd say you're welcome to follow along with the content on LinkedIn. I feel like that's a lot more of the honest, more meat on the bone stuff before you look at all the usual superficial sales material. So, and just DM, happy to just have these back and forth conversations like I'm having with you. So that's the best way forward.
Well, that's awesome. And yeah, the franchise industry needs more people like you out there talking about franchising. And it's like, for people who don't know franchises, like they only hear the bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's because the people who are building great brands or the franchisees who are building a great local version of their brand, they're too busy to talk about all of the great stuff they're doing because they're running great businesses. And I think it's important through content and through podcasts like this and us conversations and you putting stuff out that we highlight, the positive impact it can make. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for chatting about this stuff with me. I loved the conversation and excited to keep following along your journey.
Oh, thank you, man. Anytime, man, and thank you for having me, man. Yeah, let's go help some people.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks.
Thanks, man.